XRP Decision Day. Now we're talking about the Fed making a decision on interest rates. What I really want us to pay attention to is the press conference that Jerome Powell will conduct after the interest rate decision is announced. And then we're going to be talking about this XRP decision. Is XRP going to be making one more pullback towards that $2 region on, Jerome Powell making the wrong statement, Jerome Powell saying something that the markets don't like? It doesn't take much these days to move us down or move us up. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in today's update. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Everything's at my website, zachrector.com. Let's check it out. Here in a couple hours at 2 p.m. Eastern, the Federal Reserve will announce its decision on interest rates. And so what we're expecting and the markets are anticipating is the Fed is going to leave rates unchanged. I don't know what the current odds are, but the consensus is that the rates are going to be left unchanged. We're not going to get a cut. We're not going to raise rates. We're going to leave them the same. But it's going to be the press conference. That's what we're going to need to watch, because if Jerome Powell coughs, if he walks up to the podium the wrong way, if he wears the wrong tie, or maybe he wears the right tie, we're going to be sending it. I expect him to wear the purple tie as he normally does. But it looks like the Trump team and the administration here, it's like they perfectly timed these acceleration of talks, or really the beginning of the talks with China. Apparently, there was no talks taking place, as Scott Bessent testified yesterday. They were bluffing about any talks happening, but they are set to happen. And it's like they perfectly timed this one on the week where the Fed delivers the decision on rates. We have Scott Bessent saying that the United States and China are going to be meeting on Saturday and Sunday to discuss our shared interests. He says the current tariffs and trade barriers are unsustainable, but we don't want to decouple. We want fair trade. Now, what the market didn't like, the S&P 500 turns red because he says that the trade talks with China are not advanced. These are only beginning talks. So literally, because Bessent says that the talks are not advanced, they are only beginning talks, the market didn't like that yet. I mean, the market sees that, hears that, and thinks, okay, we're not getting a China deal next week. It's still going to be a ways out. And so the market didn't like that. Market comes back down. Now, depending on what Jerome Powell says, that market might even come back down a little bit further. And that's what I'm preparing for today. And that's why we're titling this episode XRP Decision Day. It's more than just XRP, but it's definitely going to impact your XRP investment. So let's be ready for that. Now, the Fed needs to cut rates if they want to help out the United States address this debt that is getting out of control. Well, it's already out of control, but really it's the interest payments that are unsustainable and will bleed us out. The interest payments on U.S. debt did decline by $13.5 billion in Q1 2025 because the rates did come down somewhat, right? Jerome Powell gave the Biden administration a few rate cuts before we handed it off to Trump. And that's an annualized $1.11 trillion in interest payments. It's incredible. Over $1 trillion in a year is what we're paying on interest. That's like me and you paying, a ridiculous amount on the interest on our, whether it be an auto loan, a credit card, our mortgage rate. Relatively speaking, it'd be like us spending, more than we made in interest. And that's exactly what's happening for the U.S. government. Now, this is the lowest level since Q2 of 2024, and this marks the first quarterly decline in interest payments since 2020. However, interest expense on the national debt is still twice as high as it was just 5 years ago. So not only has that debt grown, but the interest expense has doubled, even though we have a little bit of a pullback that took place because the rates came down ever so slightly. This is why Trump, this is why Scott Bessent are all trying to strong arm, call out Jerome Powell for being late, call out the Fed for being wrong. Talking about getting rid of Jerome Powell is because they need those rates to come down so that we can actually pay back this debt without getting bled out. Now, also perfectly coming in here to save the day is going to be US dollar stablecoins, right? The digital dollar is here. The private sector has brought many versions of the digital dollar, whether it be USDC, Tether, and now Ripple bringing RLUSD. And you're going to hear Scott Bessent here comment on how there's over $2 trillion of demand for these types of products. Now, this is not for the broader crypto space. There's way more. The broader crypto space is going to grow into the 10 trillion plus over the next few years here. But this is just the stablecoin demand well into the trillions. Take a listen in here. Scott Bessent, he believes that the U.S. should be the premier destination for digital assets, and he speaks to the 2 trillion demand coming.
Yes, sir. We believe that the United States should be the premier destination for digital assets, and as members of this committee and the Senate are attempting to do, create good market structure around that, so that U.S. best practices are used around the world.
And that's really the point, right, is having American U.S. best practices to sort of set the pace for others to follow, rather than us trying to fill in the holes that others that may be created as others set that pace.
Yes, sir. And also that digital assets are an important source of innovation that will drive that can drive usage of the U.S. dollar around the world, as with stablecoin legislation. There is speculation that there may be up to $2 trillion of demand over the next few years for U.S. government securities from digital assets.
Yeah, and actually that's conservative. He mentioned that it's speculation. It is speculation, but it's upwards of $3 trillion even by 2027. This is what Ripple and others are putting out for their expectation. Now, he notes, we had the gold standard of capital markets. There's no reason why we shouldn't have the gold standard of the digital asset marketplace as well, too. And so I think that that's the goal here laid out by President Trump. Scott Bessent sees it. And Scott Bessent echoing what President Trump went and lectured the Bitcoin bros about last year at the Bitcoin conference. No, we're not going to buy more Bitcoin. I'm not going to buy your bags. But we are going to be looking to introduce, U.S. dollars in digital form, stablecoins, to expand U.S. dollar dominance. It's going to be key to expanding U.S. dollar dominance and filling in that hole, getting more exposure to those treasuries, which, if you saw my live show last night, we noted how the Federal Reserve has bought over $34 billion of bonds in the last 2 days at the auctions that they held. So the Fed hasn't turned on the money printer to make it go bird just yet, but they have came in to backstop some of these treasury auctions already because there's not enough buyers showing up. How do you solve this? How do you address this? Well, one, you make the dollar solid again and respectable again. There's that's a whole nother conversation. But one way that you get more access to U.S. dollars that are backed by treasuries would be stable coins. And it's well into the trillions of demand over just the next couple years. And Scott Bessent sees that. I think that Ripple has made a great move in issuing RLUSD, growing that rapidly. And now they look to acquire, basically the biggest issuer in the United States of a stablecoin, Circle. Power moves being made for sure. Speaking of stablecoins, tomorrow we are expecting a vote on the Genius Act. This is the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs ahead of the Senate's historic vote on legislation to establish the first ever regulatory framework for payment stablecoins. Key stakeholders are already voicing support for the Genius Act. And then on the other hand, you got Elizabeth, I got a plan for you peasants, Warren, who doesn't want you to have stablecoins because it takes your money out of the banksters that fill her pockets. You're going to be taking your deposits out of the banks. They can't have that. And so they don't want us little peasants to even be able to earn a little bit of yield, albeit 3-4% on our stablecoin. Can't have it because it takes our deposits out of the banks. And so despite the stablecoin legislation being bipartisan, and as I've been pounding the table about it being a matter of national security, we're losing the U.S. dollar reserve currency status, Elizabeth can't let her bankster buddies lose out on that. It's more important to these private banking cartels that they maintain their power and their profit versus us continuing to have a standard of living in America. That's what this ultimately boils down to. They are willing to sacrifice Main Street America to continue their profiteering. Now, they're being disrupted, and they're being disrupted quickly, and it is time to lock in, folks, because we have Bitstamp launching their institutional talks. Looks like a little podcast show style, and this is going to be on LinkedIn Live, I guess. But what's important to note here is that Bitstamp is being acquired by Robinhood. one of the largest platforms that's disrupted the traditional capital market space, right? Robinhood acquiring Bitstamp. Bitstamp already working on creating a derivatives platform, and Bitstamp already well entrenched and partnered up with Ripple. Now, in this talk, Ripple will be represented by Pat Thelen, Managing Director and Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Ripple, Pat Thelen. He's going to be there, along with Albert Chow, Managing Director of Galaxy, and Bobby Zagata, CEO, U.S. and Global Chief Commerce Officer at Bitstamp. So you're seeing the traditional players are scrambling to get Elizabeth Warren to make that stand and to stop this from rolling out too quickly. And you have to, understand that this is what we've been up against. This is what's been holding back our space, is these entrenched, banksters, these payment rails with so much friction, and these politicians that profit off the entire system and have sold their soul to these banks. And that's what we're up against. That's what's holding back the stablecoin bill. That's what's holding back market structure. But by the time they get this released, it's going to be too late, in my opinion, because the insiders will have positioned themselves in these assets. The smart money is going to have positioned themselves in these assets, and we're going to be well off to the races when we get the legislation passed on stablecoins, on market structure, and these platforms get announced and released, and we're all settling and trading all assets on distributed ledger technology. It's right around the corner. Now, as I titled this episode XRP Decision Day, let's hone back in on this market and where we're at right now. Bitcoin was back above 97,000 this morning. We're trading right at about that level. 97.7 is what we went up to. Scott Bessent says that talks with China aren't at advanced stages, and so we have a slight pullback here, but right at 97,000, and we've already started that upward trajectory. And I think that the market has already accepted that the Fed's not going to cut rates. Now I'm expecting us to continue higher off the anticipation that the Fed has to cut at the next meeting in June or the next one in July. Now for XRP, we called the pullback perfectly, and we took advantage of it. My order got filled. I hope yours did as well too, because we laid out our purple box. We laid out our marker for the Fed meeting. And not only did we come down into the box once, we did it 3 times. And we hang out here for a couple days, allowing you to buy this dip. And what I'm preparing for now, why I titled this episode XRP Decision Day, is we have to see, is Jerome Powell going to wear the wrong tie? Is he going to say the wrong thing? And we get one more wick down. One more quick wick down. And do you have your buy order ready to go? I do. I'll tell you right now, full disclosure, not financial advice, but I have a buy order for another XRP long contract on Coinbase. And I have linked up now. I have a link for Coinbase. And now I have a link for Coinbase Advanced. If you want to start trading, you can get into their advanced program. You pay, it's like $30 a month, but your fees get reduced down to about nothing. And it allows you to get in on the derivatives, the futures contract that I'm trading, and others as well too. And so I got that linked up in the description with all of our other community resources. This is where I got back into the futures market here just this week. I got a buy order filled yesterday morning. So I'm officially long XRP, but I placed another backstop order at $2.01. So if they smack us up and XRP decides to come on back down to $2 one more time, we're ready to go. So decision day is here for the Fed. It's going to be decision day for XRP. One more little pullback here before we continue. And you guys have my prediction, $3 by the end of May. That's where I see us moving. That's what I consider the rally here in May as far as what I see coming. So please position yourself accordingly. Stay locked in. It's definitely time to still be very, very bullish, not just on XRP, but on our broader digital asset space. Many people are going to get left behind, and it's going to be sad to see. I don't want that to be you. So we are going to be covering this live. You can expect a few more updates from me throughout the day. We're going to be watching how Jerome Powell delivers his press conference. We'll be watching how the market reacts. And I already got my order filled. I'm about to go hang out the rest of the day with the kids, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And so that's what we do. We set our orders. We chill. We go touch grass. We go take the kids to the park. And I don't got to worry about any market pullback because my order's sitting there. It'll be filled if it does come. That's how we play these markets. I hope you guys are enjoying our content. If you are, let's like it. Let's share it out far and wide. ZachRector.com for all of the community resources. And I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless you all. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.